the facts are plain for all to see, or so it seems to me. Like the leaves upon the branches of that big old pine tree, we could be distant cousins long before we sail the sea.
Welcome back to another episode. I think this is number 6 in the new year of 2024. And big thanks to Rogers TV and Matt from the Bean Scene Coffee House. And we're here again. Today, my focus for myself is a little bit different. It's about trying to be a little bit more calm than I have been in the past, which is, to say the least, a problem for me. But the tranquility factor that brings you to me today is with the help of Daniel. And Daniel, I haven't seen him for a long time, but Daniel is going to give Manfred's guitar a little bit of a history lesson, which, to say, is actually not so little at all. It encompasses a number of hundreds and hundreds of years. And I'd like to begin this moment by just explaining to you that today I dragged out of the closet the flamenco guitar that was built by Jim Friesen in Toronto for me in 1971, 1972. He's gone on to Japan. But this is a rare item, and the reason I brought this today to touch on some little, what we can say, a smell, a touch, an inkling, an insinuation of something that could be classified not as a Harley Davidson, but as a flamenco guitar. Very light in wood, friction tuning pegs, a really nice piece. That is the beginning. And if you stay with me and don't touch that channel flipper, and have the wonderful opportunity of casting your vision to the left-hand side of your screen, you will meet Daniel. And I'm going to say hello to Daniel, and he won't say too much, but he'll let you hear what his instrument sounds like, what it's called, and we will go on a journey to another part of the world that's not exactly same feel and sensation of downtown Kelowna or Vernon. Here I go swiveling my head into the direction of Daniel to greet a very, very special guest, and we will discuss these other instruments a little bit later. I'm now moving over to you, Dan. How are you?
I'm good.
Good, and thanks so much for coming to help Manfred and the Bean Scene and Rogers to make an exciting episode, number 6. What have you got there?
This is a Sarod, S-A-R-O-D. And it was made in Calcutta. I bought it in 1979 from the Ali Akbar College of Music store. I wore my collector t-shirt from the Ali Akbar College of Music store.
Ali Akbar Khan is
Ali Akbar
synonymous
Khan,
with Ravi Shankar and a whole bunch of other
yes.
people?
I first heard Ali Akbar Khan in 1972, and he just was an absolutely stunning musician who came to the Bay Area, and with the help of the Grateful Dead and Carlos Santana and just tons of incredible musicians, established a school there and influenced many, many people, primarily, through teaching for many, many years.
Influenced you?
Yeah, absolutely. I first heard him in 72 or 3. I used to be a meditation teacher, transcendental meditation. Your father was Alauddin Khan, a musician who is absolutely legendary in India. He played 80 instruments and lived to be around 100. He used to be like a court musician. He just was profoundly influential, and his life is just an incredible story of giving it all up for music, like we can't believe here in the West.
Do we get a sampling of this?
Yes, this instrument Alauddin Khan refined during his lifetime. It comes down a bit from a rabab in Afghanistan, which has a wooden fretboard. Alauddin decided steel would be good.
Oh.
For this reason, it's not fretted. East Indian music is based on the singing voice of an individual. And so the music there is primarily an individual singing, and there's a spiritual dimension to it, thousands of years old, where it's singing to the divine. And the singing voice modulates differently. So the instruments are filled with what we call glissando, and with fingernails pressed against the steel. Sing. Now, in India, they get resonance from an instrument like this with sympathetic strings. So below the playing strings, there's another level of strings, very bottom ones, and they're called sympathetic in English. They're tuned to the notes of the raga that you choose to play. You adjust each note. And so this is them. But I never pick them. What happens is they hum along sympathetically, such that if I play this note, you hear it continue. I was going to play Over the Rainbow, but I'm in a different key.
Can you play this with anyone else in the area where we we live here in Vernon, are there people that you can do music with along this?
I used to jam with all sorts of friends. I used to be improvising with friends for many years on all sorts of instruments.
But you keep in touch with people in different parts of the world?
Yeah, that now with the internet, I'm a patron of Alam Khan, who is Ali Akbar Khan's son, who lives in Marin, and I contribute to his career financially, and in turn I get to listening events and concerts and practice sessions, and I can have private lessons if I want. But what I've kind of done in the last few years is I've used an app which slows music down and allows you to analyze the music. What happened in my particular life, like I was very interested in this music in 78, 79. I got initial lessons from Ashish Khan, who was Ali Akbar Khan's son as well, but he taught me the rudiments, and because I worked on a fire lookout, I couldn't go to the classes in Calgary that he was teaching. So what I've done though is in the last few years I've decided I want to learn one piece before I die, so that after I die, that's it, it's legacy, it's left. I want to record it perfectly, and so I've picked a raga called Chandra Nandan, which is a full moon raga that I heard in 1977. I got a cassette tape in 1977 that Ali Akbar made.
Well, what we'll do is move into the continuation of what we were trying to do for this particular segment, and that's to have a short discussion about the relationship between instruments and what has happened over the years with some instruments that you and I are familiar with. So if we go back far enough in a sentence, we can just sum up the fact that this flamenco music, or this pseudo-flamenco music that Manfred tries to poke around at once in a while, has its origins on the other side of the world, in India. And of course, we know things moved gradually towards the West. And suddenly it became 1800 or 1900, and I'll let you hold on to this for a minute while I explain something else. So a number of years ago, if we go back 200 years, we go to the Tyrol, to the Austrian part of well, once upon a time there were not dividers and there weren't as many borders and lines of demarcation as there are today. We have this country, this country, and this country, and this country. But in Eastern Europe and in places like Bavaria, Switzerland, I say we because I am somehow related to the Germanic part of the world. We had an instrument that we refer to as a zither. And for those people at home, and we just found out that Gerd's relative left him once, so he's stuck with one of these things. And I'll just do a simple explanation. We have, from the Orson Welles start in the film a number of years ago, The Third Man, which was about the business of escaping underground from some part of Eastern Europe into the West. And the man that wrote this piece of music that was very, very popular, that I'm going to steal this again, the person that wrote this wonderful piece of music, and this is what I'm like at home. I'm surrounded with everything. It's actually been on the television. They've been using excerpts of this. The theme from the movie, from The Third Man. That, to you, Daniel, that music was written on one of these things. So, to bring this to an interesting point here, what's unique about this instrument is that in Ontario, before I moved to Alberta, I studied with Frau Richter, Mrs. Richter, and I suffered the pain of learning how to play the zither, and I've come to the conclusion, to the terrible, terrible conclusion, that of all the instruments that I've ever poked around with in my entire life, the zither has got to be the most difficult. It's the most difficult instrument to play. Let me explain. If you've ever cut cheese with a wire, you know that it's a long way down from the top to the bottom. If you're familiar with guitars, lutes, or mandolins, you know that the space between the string and the fingerboard is in millimeters. This might as well be in inches, because if I have to push down on here, I will get cut for a long time and terrible calluses. And here, are you ready for this? When you play the fingerboard, you do everything opposite to what you've ever done before. With a guitar, you go like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. You move up the neck and up and down the neck. You see this, Dan?
Yeah.
On a zither, you don't do that. You do this. You go this way and this way, like this. And if you need another extension, you use your thumb. Like this, it makes a horrible, horrible, horrible welt in your thumb. And then when you go to the skinny strings, it's even worse. This is not a nice experience. It's not a nice experience. I learned how to do this, and I stopped after 3 years. And the other thing that's devastatingly, outrageously difficult is that you have to, yes, I've got a nice spread on my right hand. You can see that. So take a look at this with your good eye. You pick with your right thumb here while you strum from here to here with these fingers. Of course I'm terrible. I know that. I'm told that periodically. But here is a real zither player, and you can see exactly the kind of physical and mental problems that he's gone through. Now, what happened? What happened as a result of this instrument coming to America with European immigrants from Bavaria or the Black Forest or Germany? In the 1800s, there were zither players that came on things like the Mayflower. They landed, they built instrument shops, and they created instruments that were not zithers. That's the interesting part. The only person that did was Orville Gibson. What happened for a long time was there was a cheap shot made. You can see this, and you can see this. This is Daniel's contribution to this cross-reference thing, and it says 1898. So this one was made in Europe, and they tried to make zithers, but there were no zither teachers. There were very few people that took up the challenge of having your thumb, index fingers, and the rest of your body brutalized through the wire strings. So this was a shortcut. There's nothing here except the strings, and it's like a harp with no legs. And if you go to a more recent instrument, also from Germany, they also took a shortcut over there. You'll see that this one is called, a guitar zither. Some of them are called mandolin zithers. Some of them are called banjo zithers. There's a variety of hybrid names for this thing. And how this works, they made it easy. On your left side, which is my left side here, you have a real shortcut. You have a chord, and then another chord, another chord, and another chord, another chord, and another chord, and another chord. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 configurations of chords on this side of the instrument. So, what do you do with your right hand? With your right hand, you can take your pick and pluck the tune. Obviously, this one is very much out of tune. These are museum pieces. Now, I've shown you the grandfather of this zither family. This is a byproduct, a shortcut that they call a zither guitar. Very old, 1890, 1920. Move forward and take a look at this. That's a very, very expensive modern zither that was manufactured within the last 25 years. These retail for about $1,000. And this is a beautiful, beautiful piece of work. And why is this interesting for me? And why am I passing this on to you? Well, I'll tell you why. Because we have a thing south of the border called country and western music, which we are all guilty of experimenting with at some times in our life, whether it's line dancing or whether it's just listening to it or playing. And so that brings me to this. But here, to go back to what is the relevance and the connection and the relationship between my idea for today's show. It's this. It's this. I'm going to read this to you. And so, by consuming, digesting, and repurposing stacks of content, AI does exactly what humans have always done. AI does not bypass the creative act, it reveals it. Furthermore, the notion that creativity comes from inside the artist, pay attention to this one, I'll read that again. The notion that creativity comes from inside the artist is a fantasy well suited to our individual age. Artists and consumers co-create this fantasy, preferring to believe that books and songs have a precious value derived from their singular origin. Well, there is no singular origin that we can really relate to unless you go back thousands of years. But instead of going only back to Germany, Bavaria, and Eastern Europe, we move over to Johnny Cash. What's Johnny Cash got to do with this?
Hello.
You're paying attention.
Johnny Cash.
Johnny Cash's wife's mother.
Oh, yes.
Johnny Cash's wife's mother-in-law.
Yeah.
Here was America's first and original practical exponent and virtuoso of this instrument. And this instrument is the child. This terrible thing is the mother and father. And that thing is the grandmother and grandfather. To continue, what was it that Maybelle Carter, Johnny Cash's mother-in-law, left us as a reminder of where it all started? And here is AI, a perfect example of AI, where you touched the instrument and where you bled and where you picked and strummed until your fingers became blisterous so that nobody wanted to hang out with you. You have this. This is automation. This is the mother instrument with a little bit of technology And instead of having to pick out different strings that take all day to do, you simply eradicate the people. Oops, not the people. You eradicate the strings you don't want. So, the angel of darkness crawls through the universe, picking up the bad ones. He's sending them to hell. And along comes AI, along comes a technician and says, wait a minute, we don't need to do it like this. We can shut out the other ones and just do, oh my God. And so we have an auto harp that leads us to doing things like So ends my momentary lecture about the interesting elements and facets that bring this to the forefront to Mother Maybelle Carter and her great American gold record hit for the writing and the singing of the Wildwood Flower, which, once again, through the genius of interpretation, comes out in another way. That almost concludes my mini lecture series on the relativity, a short condensed history of flamenco music, where it probably came from, where did Maybelle Carter and where did the Wildwood Flower come from? It came from a growth through the zither, which is from the European part of the world that we call Bavaria. We come to the end of a mini excursion through a number of elements that make up episode 6. And we will say adieu until we meet again. You can play us out with the dramatic rendition of the Ninth Symphony, Daniel, whatever you would like to play. Thank you very much for taking the time to sit through another exciting moment with Manfred and Linda and Matt at the Bean Seed, and thanks to Baird for volunteering, and here's to Rogers. Thanks for having us.
Of that big old pine tree. We could be distant cousins long before we sail the seas. But there's not a lot of money